a city that never slept, where the streets buzzed with cars and skyscrapers pierced the clouds, there lived a man named Ethan Carter. Ethan was no ordinary man. He was a millionaire. He owned expensive cars, wore tailored suits, and lived in a penthouse high above the city. His life seemed perfect to those who admired him from afar, but behind his polished smile lay a deep emptiness. Despite having everything money could buy, Ethan often felt alone. Everyone around him seemed interested only in what he could give them, his wealth, his connections, or his influence. There was no one in his life who truly cared about him as a person. One evening, Ethan attended a charity gala held at an upscale hotel. The event was filled with glittering chandeliers, fancy dresses, and men in tuxedos sipping champagne. As always, Ethan was the center of attention. People flocked to him, laughing at his jokes and complimenting his generosity. But none of it made him happy. He had grown tired of pretending to enjoy these events, tired of the shallow conversations and fake smiles. As the night went on, Ethan wandered away from the crowd and found himself near the buffet table. That's when he noticed her, a young woman dressed in a simple black dress serving drinks to guests. Her name tag read Sophia. Unlike everyone else at the party, Sophia didn't seem impressed by Ethan's presence. When their eyes met, she gave him a polite nod before continuing her work. Something about her caught Ethan's attention. She wasn't flashy or desperate for attention. Instead, she carried herself with quiet dignity. For the first time in years, Ethan felt intrigued by someone. Curious, Ethan approached her. "You don't seem very excited to be here," he said, leaning casually against the table. Sophia looked up, unfazed by his charm. "I'm not here to be excited," she replied calmly. "I'm here to do my job." Her straightforwardness surprised Ethan. Most people would have either flattered him or tried to impress him, but Sophia didn't bother. This rarity amused him. They talked briefly, and Ethan learned that Sophia worked multiple jobs to support herself and her younger brother, who was studying engineering. She had dreams of becoming a teacher someday, but couldn't afford to quit working full-time. Ethan found himself fascinated by her honesty and determination. It was refreshing compared to the superficiality he usually encountered. An idea began forming in his mind, an idea that would entertain his friends, and perhaps even shake up this dull evening. With a mischievous grin, Ethan turned to Sophia and said, "Would you like to marry me?" Sophia blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Ethan said, raising his voice slightly so nearby guests could hear. "Marry me right now, let's make it official." The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at them. Some gasped, others chuckled nervously, assuming it was just another one of Ethan's pranks. But Sophia didn't laugh. Instead, she studied him carefully, searching for any hint of sincerity. Then, without hesitation, she smiled and said, "Sure, why not?" The crowd erupted into laughter and applause, thinking it was all part of the act. Cameras flashed as people cheered, eager to capture the moment. Even Ethan was taken aback by her response. He hadn't expected her to say yes. Deep down, though, something stirred within him, a flicker of curiosity about this bold and unassuming woman. Over the next few days, the story of Ethan's joke proposal spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with memes and headlines about the millionaire who married a waitress as a prank. Reporters hounded Ethan for interviews, while his friends teased him relentlessly. But through it all, Sophia remained calm and composed. She didn't care about the attention or the mockery. To her, this marriage was an opportunity to prove that love isn't about material things. And maybe, just maybe, she could teach Ethan something valuable along the way. For Ethan, however, the novelty of the situation quickly wore off. He realized that marrying Sophia wasn't just a joke anymore. It was real. Papers were signed, rings exchanged, and suddenly they were husband and wife. As they stood together on the steps of the courthouse, Ethan couldn't help but wonder what he had gotten himself into. Little did he know, this decision would change his life forever. The whirlwind of attention surrounding Ethan and Sophia's marriage eventually died down, but the reality of their situation remained. Ethan moved Sophia into his luxurious penthouse, a place so grand that it looked more like a museum than a home. Every room was decorated with expensive furniture, crystal chandeliers, and artwork worth millions. For Sophia, it was overwhelming at first. She had grown up in a modest apartment with barely enough space for her and her brother. Now she found herself living in a palace, surrounded by things she could never have imagined owning. Despite the opulence, Sophia didn't let herself get caught up in the glamour. She continued to live simply, wearing her usual clothes and sticking to her daily routines. Unlike Ethan, who thrived on being the center of attention, Sophia preferred to stay out of the spotlight. She spent most of her time exploring the city, volunteering at local shelters and working part-time at the community center. Her dedication to helping others puzzled Ethan, who couldn't understand why anyone would willingly spend their days doing unpaid labor. At first, their relationship remained superficial. Ethan treated Sophia like just another accessory, something to show off when it suited him. He took her to fancy dinners and high-profile events, introducing her as his wife, with a smirk. But behind closed doors, they were strangers sharing the same roof. They barely spoke unless necessary, and even then their conversations were polite but distant. Sophia knew that Ethan hadn't married her out of love. It had been a joke, a prank meant to entertain his shallow friends. Yet she didn't hold it against him. Instead, she decided to use this opportunity to teach him something about life beyond wealth. One morning, while Ethan was busy scrolling through emails on his phone, he noticed something unusual on the kitchen counter. It was a small note written in neat handwriting. "Kindness costs nothing but means everything." Intrigued, Ethan picked it up and turned it over, wondering where it had come from. The next day, he found another note. "Gratitude turns what we have into enough." And then another. "True wealth is measured by the lives you touch." These little messages began appearing everywhere, in his wallet, on his bedside table, even tucked inside his jacket pockets. At first, Ethan dismissed them as quirky decorations left by Sophia, but over time they started to sink in. Each note carried a simple yet profound message, forcing him to reflect on his own life. Was he truly happy? Did all his money bring him fulfillment? Or was he just chasing an illusion of success? Sophia watched silently as Ethan wrestled with these thoughts. She didn't push him or demand answers. Instead, she led by example. Every weekend, she volunteered at the community center, teaching art classes to underprivileged children. One Saturday, feeling curious and slightly guilty for ignoring her efforts, Ethan decided to visit the center. He told himself it was just to see what Sophia did all day, but deep down he knew there was more to it. When Ethan arrived at the community center, he was struck by how different it felt from his usual world. The building was old and worn, with peeling paint and mismatched furniture, but the atmosphere was warm and lively. Children laughed and played, their faces lighting up as they worked on colorful drawings. Sophia stood in the middle of the room, guiding them with patience and encouragement. Watching her interact with the kids, Ethan saw a side of her he hadn't noticed before. She radiated kindness and joy, qualities that seemed completely foreign to his own existence. As the afternoon went on, Ethan found himself drawn into the activities. He helped hand out supplies, played games with the children, and even attempted to draw a picture, which turned out hilariously bad. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose. These kids didn't care about his money or his status. They just appreciated his presence. When one little girl hugged him after completing her painting, Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time, genuine gratitude. That evening, as they drove back to the penthouse, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the day. "You're amazing, you know that?" he said suddenly, breaking the silence. Sophia glanced at him, surprised by the compliment. "Why do you say that?" Because you make a difference," Ethan replied, struggling to put his thoughts into words. "Those kids look up to you. You give them hope. I don't think I've ever done anything like that." Sophia smiled softly. "Everyone has the potential to make a difference, Ethan. Even someone like you." Her words lingered in his mind, long after they returned home. For the first time, he realized that there was more to life than accumulating wealth. Maybe, just maybe, he could learn something from Sophia. Over the following weeks, Ethan began spending more time at the community center. At first, he only went to accompany Sophia, but soon he started taking initiative. He used his resources to organize fundraisers, donate supplies, and renovate parts of the building. His involvement wasn't motivated by guilt or obligation. It came from a growing desire to contribute meaningfully. Slowly but surely, Ethan was beginning to change. Meanwhile, Sophia continued to leave notes around the house, each one carrying a new lesson. Some were humorous, others thought-provoking, but all of them challenged Ethan to rethink his priorities. Together, they formed a bridge between two very different worlds, the lavish lifestyle of a millionaire and the humble reality of a woman who valued human connection above all else. Though their marriage still lacked the intimacy of a traditional relationship, a shift was happening. Ethan no longer saw Sophia as just a waitress or a joke. He saw her as someone extraordinary, someone who had entered his life unexpectedly and was quietly transforming it in ways he never anticipated. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt hopeful about the future. As weeks turned into months, Ethan's transformation became more noticeable. The man who once lived for luxury and attention was now showing signs of genuine change. He spent less time at fancy parties and more time volunteering at the community center. His designer suits were replaced with casual jeans and t-shirts on weekends, and his polished shoes gathered dust as he opted for sneakers instead. Sophia watched silently as Ethan embraced this new chapter of his life, but she remained cautious. She knew that true growth took time, and while Ethan seemed different, she wasn't sure if his actions stemmed from a fleeting interest or a deeper commitment. One Saturday morning, Ethan arrived at the community center earlier than usual. He carried bags filled with art supplies and snacks, eager to help set up for the day's activities. As he unpacked the items, he noticed Sophia sitting at a table, flipping through an old photo album. Curious, he walked over and asked, "What are you looking at?" Sophia hesitated before closing the book and handing it to him. "It's pictures of my childhood," she said softly. "My parents passed away when I was young, so my brother and I had to take care of each other. Life wasn't easy, but we made it work." Ethan flipped through the pages, seeing faded photographs of a younger Sophia smiling brightly despite her circumstances. There were pictures of her playing with her brother, helping him with homework, and even working odd jobs to make ends meet. Each image told a story of resilience and love. For the first time, Ethan realized how much Sophia had sacrificed to get where she was today. Her strength inspired him, but it also made him reflect on his own privileged upbringing. "I never had to struggle like you did," Ethan admitted, setting the album down. "When I was a kid, my family didn't have much money either. But after I built my business, I forgot about those hard times. I got so caught up in chasing success that I lost sight of what really mattered." Sophia nodded understandingly. "That's why I started volunteering here. These kids remind me of myself, fighting for a better future against all odds. They need someone to believe in them, just like my brother believed in me." Her words struck a chord deep within Ethan. Growing up, he had dreamed of making a difference in the world, but somewhere along the way, those dreams had been buried under layers of greed and cynicism. Now, thanks to Sophia, he felt those aspirations resurfacing. Determined to honor her example, Ethan decided to dedicate more of his time and resources to helping others. Over the next few weeks, Ethan threw himself into the community center's projects. He organized workshops, secured sponsorships from local businesses, and even arranged for professional artists to visit and mentor the children. His efforts didn't go unnoticed. The kids began calling him Mr. Ethan and eagerly awaited his visits. One boy named Liam, who rarely spoke, started opening up during art classes, sharing his drawings and stories with Ethan. Another girl named Maya, who struggled with reading, gained confidence after Ethan spent hours practicing with her. Sophia observed these moments with pride. She could see the positive impact Ethan was having, not just on the children, but on himself as well. He laughed more freely, listened more attentively, and showed a level of empathy she hadn't seen before. Their bond grew stronger too. They began spending evenings together, discussing their days and sharing meals without the awkwardness that had once defined their relationship. Conversations flowed naturally, and for the first time they felt like equals. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, a challenge arose that tested their newfound connection. One evening, while reviewing financial reports for his company, Ethan discovered troubling news. A scandal involving one of his business partners had surfaced, threatening to tarnish his reputation and jeopardize everything he had worked for. Panic set in as headlines spread across news outlets, painting him as complicit in unethical practices. Investors pulled out, lawsuits piled up, and public opinion turned against him overnight. Overwhelmed by the backlash, Ethan reverted to his old ways. He isolated himself, shutting Sophia out and focusing solely on salvaging his empire. Days turned into weeks and Sophia barely saw him. When she did, he was distant and distracted, consumed by stress and guilt. It hurt her to see him regress, but she refused to give up on him. Instead, she doubled down on her efforts at the community center, channeling her frustration into action. One particularly difficult night, Sophia found Ethan pacing anxiously in the living room. His eyes were bloodshot, and his usually impeccable appearance was disheveled. She approached him gently. "Ethan," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder, "you can't do this alone. Let me help you." Ethan looked at her, tears welling up in his eyes. "I've ruined everything, Sophia. My company, my reputation, I don't know how to fix it." "You haven't ruined anything," she replied firmly. "Yes, mistakes were made, but running away won't solve anything. You're stronger than this, and you're not alone. I'm here with you." Her words broke through the walls Ethan had built around himself. For the first time, he allowed himself to lean on someone else. Together, they devised a plan to address the scandal head-on. Sophia encouraged him to issue a public apology, take responsibility for his role, and implement reforms to prevent similar issues in the future. She also rallied the community center volunteers to organize a fundraiser, using the proceeds to support families affected by the fallout from the scandal. Through it all, Sophia stood by Ethan's side, reminding him of the values they had cultivated together: honesty, humility, and compassion. Slowly but surely, Ethan regained his footing. While the road to recovery was long and difficult, he emerged from the ordeal a changed man. He sold parts of his business empire, simplifying his life and redirecting his focus toward meaningful pursuits. By the end of it all, Ethan realized that the greatest wealth he possessed wasn't his money. It was the love and support of the people around him. And at the center of it all was Sophia, the woman who had taught him how to live with purpose. The storm that had shaken Ethan's life finally began to settle, but its aftermath left deep scars. The scandal had cost him millions, tarnished his reputation, and forced him to sell off large portions of his business empire. What remained was a fraction of what he once owned, a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes could change. For someone who had built his identity around wealth and success, this loss was devastating. Yet amidst the chaos, one constant remained: Sophia. Sophia had stood by Ethan during his darkest days, offering unwavering support and guidance. She had helped him navigate the crisis with grace, encouraging him to take responsibility for his actions and rebuild trust with those he had wronged. Her presence gave him strength, but now as the dust settled, Ethan couldn't help but feel guilty. He had dragged her into his mess, exposing her to public scrutiny and judgment. Reporters hounded them both, questioning whether their marriage was real or just another publicity stunt. The pressure weighed heavily on Sophia, though she never let it show. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of interviews and meetings, Ethan found Sophia sitting quietly on the balcony of their penthouse. The city lights twinkled below, but her gaze was distant, lost in thought. Concerned, Ethan approached her. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Sophia turned to him, forcing a small smile. "I'm fine. she replied. Just thinking. About what? She hesitated before speaking. About us. About everything that's happened. I know you're trying your best to fix things, Ethan, and I admire that. But sometimes I wonder, do you regret marrying me? If none of this had happened, the scandal, the media frenzy, would we still be together? Her question caught Ethan off guard. He sat down beside her, taking her hands in his. Sophia, I'll admit our marriage started as a joke, but somewhere along the way, it became real. For me, at least. You've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. Before you, I was empty, chasing success without knowing why. But now I have purpose. And that's because of you. Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes as she listened to his words. She had always hoped Ethan would come to see her as more than just a prank or a fleeting distraction, but hearing him say it aloud meant everything. Still, doubts lingered in her mind. Could they truly move forward together, or were they too different to last? As the weeks passed, Ethan threw himself into rebuilding his life. With Sophia's encouragement, he shifted his focus from profit to impact. He invested in sustainable projects, partnered with local charities, and even launched a scholarship program for underprivileged students. His efforts earned him respect from the community, slowly repairing the damage done by the scandal. People began to see him not as the arrogant millionaire they once knew, but as a man committed to making amends. Despite these positive changes, challenges continued to test their relationship. One major issue arose when Ethan announced his decision to sell the penthouse. It's time for a fresh start, he explained to Sophia. We don't need all this space, or all these reminders of my old life. Sophia nodded, understanding his reasoning, but inside, she felt conflicted. Moving out of the penthouse symbolized leaving behind the life she had grown accustomed to. While she didn't crave luxury, she worried about starting over in an unfamiliar place. Would they find common ground in their new home, or would their differences drive them apart? They eventually settled on a modest apartment near the community center. It was smaller and simpler than anything Ethan had lived in before, but it felt warm and welcoming. Boxes filled with memories lined the living room as they unpacked together, sharing laughter and stories. For the first time, their home truly felt like theirs, not Ethan's mansion or Sophia's rented room, but a shared space built on love and compromise. Another challenge came in the form of Ethan's family. His parents, wealthy socialites who had always disapproved of his marriage to Sophia, decided to pay them a visit. They arrived unannounced one Sunday afternoon, dressed impeccably and carrying an air of superiority. Ethan greeted them stiffly, while Sophia offered polite smiles despite feeling uneasy. We need to talk, Ethan's mother declared, cutting straight to the point. This situation has gone on long enough. You can't throw away your legacy for some girl. Ethan's jaw tightened. Sophia isn't some girl. She's my wife, and she's the reason I'm still standing today. I won't let you disrespect her. His father chimed in, his tone condescending. You may think you're doing good work now, but mark my words, it won't last. You'll grow tired of this lifestyle, and then what? Will you go crawling back to us begging for forgiveness? Sophia stepped forward, her voice steady. With all due respect, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, your son has already proven that he's capable of growth and change. He doesn't need your approval to live a fulfilling life. And neither do I. The room fell silent. Ethan stared at Sophia, admiration shining in his eyes. Her courage inspired him to stand firmer in his convictions. After a tense exchange, his parents left, frustrated but unable to sway him. Though the encounter left both Ethan and Sophia drained, it also strengthened their resolve. They were a team now, united against whatever obstacles came their way. Through every trial, Sophia and Ethan leaned on each other for support. They celebrated small victories like securing funding for a new community project, and comforted each other during setbacks like losing a potential investor. Their bond deepened with each passing day, forged through shared struggles and triumphs. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the park, Ethan stopped suddenly and turned to face Sophia. "Do you remember the night we got married?" he asked, a hint of nostalgia in his voice. "How could I forget?" Sophia teased. "You proposed as a joke, and I said yes to prove a point." Ethan chuckled, then grew serious. "Back then, I didn't understand what love really meant. I thought it was about convenience or status, but now I realize it's about partnership. It's about choosing someone who challenges you, supports you, and makes you want to be better. Sophia, you've done all of that for me, and so much more." Sophia's heart swelled with emotion. "And you've done the same for me," she replied. "You've shown me that people can change, that second chances are worth fighting for. Together we've created something beautiful." Hand in hand they continued walking, their steps synchronized as if mirroring the harmony they had found in their relationship. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but they faced it with confidence, knowing they had each other. Months after the storm of scandals and challenges, Ethan and Sophia stood together on a stage bathed in soft golden light. It was the grand reopening ceremony for the community center, a place that had become a cornerstone of their lives. What had once been a small rundown building was now a vibrant hub of hope and opportunity, thanks to Ethan's financial contributions and Sophia's tireless dedication. The crowd gathered below cheered as banners were unveiled, revealing the new name of the center, the Carter-Sophia Foundation. Ethan adjusted the microphone nervously before addressing the audience. Public speaking had never been his strong suit, but today felt different. Today he wasn't just a millionaire trying to impress people. He was a man sharing a story of transformation, a story made possible by the woman standing beside him. "Years ago," Ethan began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach, "I thought wealth defined success. I chased money, power, and recognition, believing they would bring me happiness. But I was wrong. True wealth isn't measured in dollars or possessions. It's measured in the lives we touch and the love we give." He paused, glancing at Sophia, who smiled, encouragingly. Her presence gave him strength just as it always had. "When I met Sophia," he continued, "I didn't know what to expect. Our marriage started as a joke, something I did without thinking. But Sophia saw beyond my flaws. She taught me the value of kindness, humility, and compassion. She showed me that everyone has the potential to grow, even someone like me." The crowd erupted into applause, but Ethan held up a hand to quiet them. "This foundation represents our shared vision, a world where no child goes hungry, no dream feels out of reach, and no one is left behind. None of this would have been possible without Sophia. She is my partner, my inspiration, and the reason I'm standing here today." Tears glistened in Sophia's eyes as she stepped forward to speak. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "When I first came into Ethan's life, I didn't know what the future held. All I knew was that I wanted to make a difference, to show him that love isn't about material things. Over time, we've learned so much from each other. Ethan has grown into someone I deeply admire, and I'm proud to call him my husband." Her words resonated with the audience, many of whom had followed their journey through media coverage and personal interactions. They weren't just hearing a speech, they were witnessing the culmination of two lives intertwined by love, resilience, and purpose. After the ceremony, Ethan and Sophia walked through the newly renovated center, marveling at how far it had come. Bright murals adorned the walls, classrooms buzzed with activity, and laughter echoed through the halls. Children played games, teenagers worked on computers, and volunteers prepared meals in the expanded kitchen. Every corner of the building told a story of hope and renewal. "You did this," Ethan said, turning to Sophia. "You brought this place to life." Sophia shook her head. "We did this, together. Without your support, none of this would have been possible. You trusted me, believed in me, and gave me the resources to turn my dreams into reality." Ethan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "And you saved me," he whispered. "You saved me from myself." They stood there for a moment, embracing amidst the joyous chaos of the center. For the first time in years, both of them felt truly content, not because of what they had achieved, but because of how far they had come as individuals and as a couple. Life wasn't perfect, of course. There were still challenges ahead, financial constraints, logistical hurdles, and moments of doubt. But Ethan and Sophia faced them head-on, knowing they could rely on each other. Their relationship had evolved from a marriage built on pretense to one rooted in mutual respect, trust, and love. They celebrated milestones together, supported each other during tough times, and continued to grow as partners. One evening, as they sat on the couch in their cozy apartment, Ethan picked up a photo album. It was the same one Sophia had shown him months earlier, filled with memories of her childhood. He flipped through the pages, stopping at a picture of her and her brother smiling brightly despite their hardships. "You remind me of them," Ethan said, pointing to the photo. "Your strength, your determination, they're incredible." Sophia leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. "And you remind me of the person I always hoped you'd become. Kind, selfless, and full of purpose." Ethan kissed, the top of her head feeling a sense of peace wash over him. "Do you think we'll ever stop learning from each other?" Sophia laughed softly. "I hope not. That's what makes life beautiful. The constant growth, the surprises, the little moments that change us forever." As the years passed, Ethan and Sophia's foundation grew into a nationwide initiative, impacting countless lives across the country. They traveled to different cities, opening new centers and partnering with local organizations. Along the Yayata way, they inspired others to follow in their footsteps, to use their resources and talents to create positive change. Their love story became a beacon of hope for those who doubted the possibility of redemption and transformation. People marveled at how two individuals from vastly different worlds had come together to build something extraordinary. But for Ethan and Sophia, it wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about proving that love, when nurtured with patience and understanding, could overcome any obstacle. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Ethan surprised Sophia with a trip to the beach. As they strolled along the shore, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Ethan stopped and turned to her. "Do you remember when we first met?" he asked. "How could I forget?" Sophia replied with a grin. "You proposed to me as a joke, in front of a room full of strangers." Ethan chuckled, then grew serious. "What if I told you I want to do it again? Not as a joke this time, but for real. Will you marry me, Sophia?" Sophia's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with affection. "Ethan, we're already married." "I know," he said, taking her hands in his. "But I want to start fresh. No pretenses, no jokes, just you and me, promising to spend the rest of our lives growing together, learning from each other, and making a difference." Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she nodded. "Yes, Ethan. 1,000 times yes." Hand in hand, they watched the waves crash against the sand, their hearts full of gratitude for the journey they had shared and the future that lay ahead. Together, they had proven that even the most unexpected beginnings could lead to the most extraordinary endings, a testament to the transformative power of love, humility, and second chances.